Hola, buenas tardes, bienvenido a la México. Hoy es jueves, estoy en Parque Alameda y este video es sobre seguridad en Ciudad de Mexico. And once again, in English. So today I am in Alameda Park in Mexico City, and today I'm going to be answering the age-old question, is Mexico City safe? So on that note, I need to find somewhere to sit down so I can talk to you. Let's go. So this video is going to be a bit of a relaxed talking video. It is a bit cloudy, as you can see behind me. I'm hoping it's not going to start raining halfway through, but we'll see what happens. And to start off with, I'm just going to tell you, is Mexico City safe? Yes, it is. Please watch the rest of this video. I'm going to go into a bit more detail about that now. And you might be wondering what makes this video different from all the countless other videos on YouTube about whether Mexico City is safe. I'll tell you now, there's a couple of things I just want to highlight for you to keep in mind throughout this video. The first one is that personally I think whether a city is safe or not very much depends on whether you are a local or a native to that place, or whether you are a tourist, a backpacker, a long-term traveller, or a digital nomad. I'm pretty much all of those last four ones. So you know, what I mean by that is that someone that lives in Mexico City will probably have more knowledge and more experience of that place. They'll know more about the negatives, they'll know more about the safety than I ever would. You know, I've been in Mexico City now, I think about 4 months this year, 4 or 5 in total in Mexico. So I could never have the same amount of knowledge as a Mexico City resident would have. You know, the way I look at it is that when I think about London, you know, I lived there for 34 years in the UK, that's where I'm from, and, you know, when I see foreigners talking about London as if it's the best place on earth and it's amazing, I almost start laughing, because my experience and knowledge of London is obviously more extensive than theirs, and I'm obviously going to have more knowledge of the negatives like crime, homelessness, alcohol issues, drug issues, you know, things like that, that in Mexico City as a visitor, sorry, I bit my lip, I probably wouldn't be aware of those things, but I'm going to tell you my take on it anyway. The second thing, which is really important, and I've mentioned this before, is about the word responsibility. Again, personally, I think that every city in the world is safe. Okay, maybe a few exceptions, places in Syria, Rio de Janeiro at the moment, places in Venezuela, for example. But the experience that you have in a city is very much dependent on your responsibility and using your common sense and that kind of thing. Any city can be safe, but if you are not using your common sense and taking responsibility for your actions, then it won't be safe. You're going to have issues. So on that note, let's just move on to a few points about Mexico City. If you're coming to Mexico City for the first time, you need to do some research in terms of where to stay, because as I've said in previous videos, there's so much variety in terms of the locations and the neighborhoods. There's so many neighborhoods, colonias, whatever you want to call them, barrios, and they all differ hugely. So if you're going to stay in somewhere like Condesa or Roma Norte, which is a common area for people to stay in Mexico City, then you're probably not going to have much of an issue, because it's very much tailored towards tourists, foreigners, people that are here for a short time. I live in Doc Torres, which I'm going to cover more in the next video coming up, and that is viewed as being quite a dangerous area, along with places like Tepito, Guerrero, Garibaldi, areas like that. And you know, obviously having some knowledge about where to stay in Mexico City for your individual trip, obviously everyone's different, that will make a huge difference. You know, I'm here for a long time. I can't afford to stay in somewhere like Condesa, to be honest with you, and I don't want to. I'm quite happy staying in Doc Torres because it's cheap, it's close to everything, it's convenient. So it's up to you what you do. The next point is about transport. So there's so many ways of getting around Mexico City, it's crazy. So you've got Ubers, taxis, buses, the subway. And firstly, I want to talk about Uber and taxis. So I never get an Uber or taxi, largely for this reason. Yes, the traffic in Mexico City, as you would expect, is chaotic, an absolute nightmare. I think I've only got a taxi twice coming to and from airports, I believe. You know, additionally with Uber, obviously if you're paying on your card and you're from another country, you're going to have bank charges. I get charged £1.25 for every transaction I have with my UK bank, so it's just a waste of money. And additionally, it takes longer than other forms of transport, so what's the point? I think for a tourist coming to Mexico City for maybe a week, and maybe you're used to getting taxis in your country, wherever you're from, then you're probably going to do that. It's convenient, it's safer, I think, than other forms of transport, particularly if you're a solo female. I'm not being sexist or anything, but let's face it, sometimes it's less safe for single females on their own travelling around a big city late at night. The thing about that though, when I hear people say, oh, I had an issue in an Uber or a taxi, you put yourself in that position. Again, what I said earlier about responsibility and using a common sense. If I was drunk at 2 o'clock in the morning, I wouldn't just get a random taxi in the middle of the street. Simple as that. I would find another way of getting home, or I just wouldn't put myself in that position in the first place. So, yeah, Ubers, I would say, are very safe. I've never had an issue. I don't know anyone else that's had an issue as well. So, yeah, that's the first one. Moving on to buses, so obviously you're going to have the same issue with buses as you do with taxis in terms of traffic, horrendous. I have been pickpocketed on a bus before, not in Mexico City, in Malaysia, and that's one reason why I'm slightly reluctant to get on a bus. Why would I get a bus when I could get the subway? Moving on to the subway, so I am probably the biggest fan of the subway. It does get a huge bad rap, I guess. It's got a bit of a reputation from a lot of people, and I don't think it helps when people slag it off or they're negative about it. It's efficient, it's cheap. I've never had an issue on the subway. I don't know anyone that has ever had an issue on the subway. I've only ever seen one instance of a man, I don't know what he was trying to do to a woman, but at the next stop, the police jumped on and removed the guy from the train. So in comparison to so many other subways in the world, even London, Mexico City subway is safer. I've had issues on the London Underground that I've never had here. And some advice about the Mexico City subway. You see I'm wearing a bag like this, okay, diagonal across me. Always wear a bag like that so people can't grab it off you. Put your valuables underneath other things in your bag with the zip shut, things like that, so realistically you're going to notice if someone's trying to open your bag and go through it. I have a no pockets rule, i.e. nothing in my pockets rules, except my cigarettes and a lighter, so my phone, my filming equipment, things like that go in my bag underneath everything, and I hold my bag on the front of me when I'm on the train. And it's not just foreigners that do that, locals do that. I've had subscribers tell me about issues they've had on subways where they will put their bag on their front just to make sure that they don't have an issue. And something else about the subway which I think is really important is about blending in and fitting in. I'm lucky because I'm by myself. There isn't a one way that Mexicans look in terms of their appearance. It's very varied in terms of different areas in Mexico, so I could quite easily pass for Mexican in some ways. And the thing I see a lot of is tourists that are maybe in a couple or a group and they're talking to each other in English, which just makes it obvious that they're not Mexican and singles you out for a potential issue like pickpocketing or something like that. The other thing I do is mirroring, which is a great little term that I used to use when I used to work in the UK. For example, if I'm getting on the train at maybe 5:30 p.m. and there's people coming home from work and they've got their arms folded and they look stressed out because they've had a busy day, I'll do the same thing. So when they look at me, they probably think the same thing. They don't look at me as a tourist. So blending in on the subway is probably the most important thing. But overall, I'm the biggest advocate for the subway. It's cheap, it's the best way to get around the city, and I've never had a problem, and hopefully you will not either. Moving on to what I mentioned earlier about responsibility and using your common sense. So if I was to go out at 2 o'clock in the morning to get a drink from a shop or whatever, I would use my wiles, if you know what I mean. I would be aware of my surroundings. I'm lucky that I've been to a lot of countries in the world and I'm used to that kind of thing. I used to live in a slightly dodgy area of London, so I'm used to being aware of my surrounding, what's going on, the people around me, that kind of thing. And I understand that if you're a new traveller, you haven't travelled to many places before, that might not be second nature, but for me it is. And that's the biggest thing. You've got to be aware of your surroundings and don't put yourself in a position where you're going to have an issue. So, like I said on the subway, going out at night, being drunk. I never get drunk, very rarely. Being aware of maybe homeless people, alcoholics, drug addicts on the street and keeping away from them. Oh, there's a helicopter. Right, helicopter's gone. Hallelujah. What was I saying? Oh my God. Yeah, okay, another area that you want to keep a watch out for is in like busy food courts, busy shopping centres where there's a lot of people. But that can happen anywhere. It's not a thing about Mexico City that in busy areas you're going to get robbed, because that can happen anywhere. You know, I've been robbed before. I was robbed in Rio de Janeiro during Carnival. I was mugged by a drug addict in Sydney, Australia, and I had my wallet stolen in Malaysia last year in Kuala Lumpur. Don't get me started on Kuala Lumpur. But my point is that it can happen anywhere, and it's not something that's singled out in terms of Mexico. Use your common sense and responsibility, and you won't have an issue. Simple. Overall, the thing I just want to say about Mexico City to end this video is that I understand that if you haven't been here before, or you haven't maybe spent some time in Central American cities or South American, it can be a huge culture shock, a massive shock to your system, and naturally those things in terms of responsibility and common sense that I talked about won't come to you straight away. It will take some time to feel streetwise and feel comfortable in that situation. And I'm going to touch on this in another video, which I kind of have before. It's about language and clothing. You know, dress like a local. Not that many Mexicans wear this red jacket, but you know what I mean. You know, fit in, blend in, like I said about the subway. That is the key thing in terms of feeling safe in the city for me and feeling comfortable. So I hope this video has helped those of you who are looking to come to Mexico City for the first time, or maybe move to Mexico City for a long period like I am. And you know, the thing I will say, well, don't be scared at Mexico City. It's not as bad as people think. In fact, it's not bad at all. The reputation that it has is unfounded. It shouldn't. There shouldn't be that reputation, because personally, I've never had an issue. I hope you never do either when you come here. So if you would like, there is a whole massive playlist of Mexico videos. I think it's about 45 videos at the moment. I think this is video 46. We'll see. The link to that is down in the description below, so feel free to check that out. Don't forget to subscribe if you like, and leave a like, leave a comment. Why don't you tell me about your experience in Mexico City? Have you had any issues with what I talked about in terms of the subway, things like that? So I'm going to go and film another video now, which is just down the road. Sit tight for that, and I will catch you later.